everybody, and welcome to Machtails from the Cantina Live. Happy Friday to everybody. We are missing my good friend and brother, Tyler Page, tonight. So the wheels are a little wobbly on the wagon. Well, we just did the big show last week with Vader Girl. Got a little of the rust off. We have not been doing a lot of live shows like we were doing the month of May. Speaking about live shows, for those of you that have not been to this show before, Good Guy Tins, I do a name draw for my Patreon members, and I thank you all. I cannot thank you guys enough. Speaking about Patreon members, we have not one, but three producers of Machtails tonight. So it's going to be kind of a fun way to kick the weekend off. The Bad Guy Tin. I know some of you guys are booing, some of you guys are applauding. This is the drinking word of the night. And my producer, who's going to join us, Matthew Rooney, is going to type this word in for me. You guys can... drinking word of the night is stress. You know, it's kind of funny because you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, hey, you know what? You shouldn't drink. You shouldn't smoke. But what relieves stress? Drinking and smoking. Hopefully, we're going to relieve some of your stress the best that we can tonight on Machtails from the Cantina. But I want to bring somebody on that I have not seen since Nashville, Tennessee. He became a Patreon member right away, and I was very, very flattered that he did that. Because I went to Celebration, hustled the hell out of the floor in the bars, did not come back with one Patreon member. But people like Cody Moore, who is a producer of the show, and also Matthew Rooney and Suds. Todd is going to join us tonight as well. It's these people that really drive the train. They keep this 2-year-old show going. Speaking about ICC Con, don't forget, for those of you that are in the Illinois area, or those of you that like to travel, C2E2 is happening the weekend of August 4th through the 6th. I believe I got those dates right. I will be hanging out with my good friend Suds on that Saturday. But let me just read this guest list to you. Billy D. Williams, who's been on the circuit. Brendan Wayne, John Wayne's grandson, the stunt performer in The Mandalorian. He's going to be there. I think this might be one of his first appearances. David Barclay from Return of the Jedi. He's been on the circuit for a while. Moses Ingram. We talked a lot about her and her character on last week's show. I'm looking forward to getting a photo with her. Rosario Dawson, who is a fan favorite, and we're going to see a lot more of her in Ahsoka coming up in the near future. And of course, Rupert, the Master Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor, he is going to be there as well. So if you guys are looking for a convention to go to and you still have regret not going to Celebration, or maybe you still have Celebration blues, this is a good one. But without further ado, would you please welcome to the show for the first time, producer Cody Moore. Cody, welcome to the show. How's your weekend off? To a good start?
Pretty good. Had a good Friday at work and just powered through a day, you know.
That's good. You got to power through the day into the weekend. I know you just got back from what seemed to be a cool place because of my roots there. Did you find anything that said mocked on it when you were out there?
I'm sure I saw it somewhere. I just probably don't remember. I saw so many new words and new names while I was there.
And that was your first time over in Germany, yeah?
Yeah, my first time actually going there and staying more than just like a layover on a flight.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm giving you the Mind Probe questionnaire today because I want to get to know you a lot more, a little bit at light speed. But it's not on the questionnaire, but it is a good question because I've looked into you a little bit on your Facebook page. We're connected that way. You have Mole Walker, and I know you're related to the video game community.
Yeah.
Are those two different things, or is Mall Walker the
It's the
content?
same thing. It's all together pretty much. Mall Walker's like my gaming, uh, cosplay page all rolled into one.
Where can people follow you if they're hardcore gamers? They want to,
Um,
people that follow this show do love video games. Everywhere from the newest PlayStation and Xbox to the coin op games, and we always go to the Galloping Ghost. You got a spot people can watch your clips
yeah, I'm on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, so all
all
of
under
them
Mall
under.
Walker.
Yep, just Mall Walker.
Facebook,
Kept it
YouTube,
simple.
and Twitch. Cool, very, very, very cool. Do you feel comfortable enough to take the Mind Probe questionnaire?
Yeah.
I know you've been watching the show for, you've binge watched a lot of it over the last couple months. So we're going to start heavy.
Okay.
What Star Wars movie has made you cry?
Ah, probably Rogue One, just because it felt like there were times when I watched it like that first time. There's some extra details I'll leave out this time, but I saw it in theaters and had been having a good day, and just the emotional impact of how it ended and all the characters you grew to know and just being killed off,
Yeah, right.
having more of a sense of finality to it.
Yeah, there was something about that movie, as you know. A lot of people that watch even the Mocktails on YouTube, they know that that's my favorite Star Wars film, and I think I like it the most because it brings that emotional side out of me every time I watch it.
Yeah, it's got an extra sense of realism to it, I feel like,
Yes,
within the Star Wars universe.
absolutely. Uh, do you ever run out of alcohol in your house?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a big drinker, but I do drink, you know, casually or like with people for fun. But
So you're not like me. You have a fridge in the garage that's just
I mean,
stocked like my Star Wars collection.
I've been that way before. Like I was in the military for 5 years, and during that time period, I, did a lot of drinking and kind of
Sure.
really got into exploring different beers and started to appreciate different types of beers. But but after I got out, I kind of reverted back to my more natural roots.
Yeah,
So
sure. Yeah, well, thank you for your service. I remember that we chatted about you serving in the military because my brother served in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's not easy. It's not easy. So thank you for everything that you've done. And again, Andy down in Miami, he served in the military as well. So there's a lot of vets that tune into the show. Some heavy drinkers, some people that don't drink, like show producer Matthew Rooney. I don't know how he puts up with the hijinks and the tomfoolery that the show produces, but I guess we're not that silly. We like to kind of stay on track sometimes. Now you just got back from Germany. What is one destination that's still on the bucket list?
Hawaii, because I want to go see the filming locations for Jurassic Park.
Yes.
So that's always been on the list.
Jurassic Park, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and so many other things. Now, remember,
All that's Jurassic.
you got some Raiders back there.
No, this is all Jurassic back here.
It's all Jurassic. Okay, yeah,
This
that's
whole
right. You're a big
corner.
Jurassic Park fan. Do you have any
Yeah.
Jurassic Park tattoos?
I do have a dinosaur. It's not strictly Jurassic Park, but it's a Velociraptor on my calf.
Very cool. So you have Star Wars and dinosaurs.
Mm.
Are you a big fan of the boga? That's kind of a prehistoric looking animal from Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was cool. I really like too the Islamir back here
Oh yeah.
with Thrawn.
Yeah, there are some cool prehistoric reptilians that are in the Star Wars universe for sure.
Yeah.
I've been to Hawaii, God, 7, 8 times. Kauai, that's where you want to go. It's amazing there, and when you're there, you will feel like you are in Jurassic Park. They filmed it there for a reason.
Yeah, that's
Filmed it
that's why I want to see it. Is just because I've seen some of the pictures even of other tourists going there, and I
Yeah,
can visibly recognize, the landscape, and then be like, oh wow, that's from the movie.
yeah. You line up the shot, right?
Yep. I can remember it just vividly because that's one of those movies. It was just the one I grew up with all the time.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the filming location is that they did not change. I mean, of course they added the dinosaurs in, but they used that backdrop because it looks prehistoric when you're on the island of Kauai. Your first concert that you've ever attended?
Oh man. I mean, I think Warp Tour was one of the first. So it wasn't really a concert, but it was a lot of
No, that's a
small
concert, man.
concerts.
That's a shit ton of
Yeah,
concerts in
that's
one.
what I mean. It was a large concert for one of my first ones. So
Yeah, what year was it? Do you remember?
it was San Antonio when I was in the military. So it was like maybe 2012.
Yeah, that might have
2000.
been one of the last ones, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh no, it went on at least 4 or 5 more years after that.
Okay, yeah, that was a long running festival. Now you got a lot of cool things behind you. What is your most useful collector's item that you own?
Hmm. Um,
Like any Jurassic Park cooking utensils or
I mean, this is kind of cool. In my glass, they've melted already. See, the cup is Jurassic, but my ice cubes were also boba helmets and mythosaurs
uh,
until,
you use the mini ones or use the big ones? Because I know William Sonoma came out with
they're the
those
little
a couple
like
of years ago.
rubberized trays. It's
Yeah, the
like,
rubberized trays, yes.
yeah.
Cannot go wrong with those. Now, because you are a video gamer, maybe more from the new school, I'm more from the old school. Donkey Kong or Pac-Man?
Oh man, Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Were you
I played
introduced
a lot of old school too.
to Pac-Man first?
Between those two, yeah. Pac-Man was the one that I can remember earlier.
Donkey Kong was the reason my mom let me cross the busy street by myself because it was at the 7-Eleven in downtown Westmont, the town that I grew up in, the town that Muddy Waters lived in when I was living there. And there's something about Nintendo that, you know, some people are like Barry from the Babu Freaks. He loves Sega. I'm like, man, Nintendo for me is one of those things. But yeah, you got to give it to
Yeah.
Pac-Man. Pac-Man is one of the originals as well.
I do love Mario, so there's definitely a lot of Nintendo I love. Mario is one of my favorites, like
Yeah,
Super Mario 64. That's one of those Nintendo 64 games I played a ton of.
yeah, and I'm a big fan of Mario Kart. You can't go. That
Yeah.
never gets old, especially late nights. I remember drinking, smoking, not cigarettes, but just having a good time. Playing with some roommates, and we'd play Mario Kart till the sun came up.
Yeah.
If you, hey, Ian Savage is tuning in. On my way to Columbus, saying, hey, during our pit stop, hey, thank you for listening to us in the car, Ian. Um, the Mega Millions is up to 1 point something billion dollars. If you won, what would be your most biggest purchase with that money? Like the one big thing where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna buy this because I'm a
This
billionaire, but now I'm not a billionaire because I had to pay all this in taxes.
this is perfect because I just saw this mansion for like 26 million that was completely Star Wars themed, the entire house.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
So
where,
you should look that up. I don't know where it's at. It was just something I saw on social media and I was like, is this real? And I looked at the pictures and they were legit. The movie theater looks like you're sitting in the Millennium Falcon.
26 million.
Yeah, it was expensive, but
Oh, you
if I
never
had
want a
that
million
money,
left.
I'd buy it.
So you would buy that. I think that would be a good. Real estate's always a good investment. I don't know if you're much of a swear word user like myself. What's your favorite swear word?
Ah, probably the F-bomb.
The
I
F bomb.
mean,
Yeah, we've dropped that
uh,
many a times on
yeah,
this.
that's a reoccurring one.
Yes, you cannot go wrong with that. There's a documentary on that word alone, and it's called the F Word. I don't know if you've seen that before.
No.
But it's really cool because it's a feature length documentary, and it's just the history behind that word and the importance of that word and several meanings for that word. I mean, it was like a deep dive into the F word, and it was like an hour and a half long documentary. I highly recommend that one. I don't know if you're much of a sports guy, but baseball or football?
I mean, I played both growing up. I played baseball younger years, and then I played football and wrestled in later years. But anymore, I wouldn't really like either of them.
Uh, that's okay. You don't have to be a baller in
Yeah.
that
I mean,
sense.
basketball, I would put above both of
Okay, so
them.
basketball you would put it. Okay, so when it comes
Yeah.
to the ball game, you would put basketball up over baseball and football. Okay, I respect that, especially being a Chicagoan for my whole life.
So yeah, you had the greatest for,
We
a long time, so you
there will
definitely
not.
have to be able to appreciate that.
There is no way that it's funny because back in the early '90s, if you didn't like basketball, Michael Jordan made you fall in love with basketball.
When I
Like
was a kid,
everybody.
Michael Jordan's would drew me to it, that and Space Jam, when I was a child.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
And
was
I'm
all.
sure I remember, if I remember correctly too, didn't they do a Space Jam video game as well?
I don't remember. I
I
used to
think,
play a bunch of the old ones on 64 where it was like the arcade style where you'd slam dunk a flaming ball and all kinds of craziness. But
yeah, the NBA game too for Xbox One, that was always always a riot. What's the one talent that you are most proud of that you have?
uh, I don't know. Probably just perseverance, I guess.
Hey,
I mean,
that's a good talent. Amen to that.
yeah,
Amen to that, man. I know one of the things that you like about the podcast, the weekly podcast on Mocktails, is it's inspirational to you, and it's very raw and it's very true, and uh, you
yeah,
know, uh, we all go through hardships, and that's kind of one of the things that I like to celebrate on the podcast is perseverance. So
yeah.
that is a very very good talent, and unfortunately, not everybody not everybody has that. Last question is a little bit of a downer. We started heavy. Oh yeah, the Guardians are playing the Rays. It's John Drake chiming in, Patreon member, and you were a Sith this weekend, and I'm a Jedi. Well, we all know what happened at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So hopefully that's what the Rays can do in Cleveland. Um, the one thing somebody stole from you, and I hate to end it on a downer, but
Oh, it's all right.
the one thing that somebody stole from you that you will never forget. I remember when I was in junior high, somebody used to steal my little Game and Watch Nintendo things,
Yeah,
and it's like I loved those back then. They were Christmas gifts. I remember, and the guy's a Star Wars fan. He's on Facebook, and I refuse to become friends with this guy because he stole these from me. Like I
yeah.
hold grudges with people.
I mean that's understandable, especially if they're not willing to acknowledge it still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, after all these years, right? After all these
Yeah.
years.
Um,
Anything that somebody stole from you that
I don't know. Nothing. I can't think of anything directly. No.
so you might be more forgiving than I am.
I just don't. I haven't gotten as much stolen probably then. I don't know. I don't know what it is. That or I just didn't notice it was stolen.
That's a good thief. Hey, Tyler Page, he's not with us behind the scenes today, but he says Mall Walker appearance, a classic. Wish I was hanging, but Tyler, we miss you, we love you, and I'm glad you're at least tuning in tonight. Don't forget to schmooze your friend Tyler with the Corvette documentary for show producer Michael Wistock. We are looking forward to an interview. Cody, I'm looking forward to spending more time with you next month on Mocktails Live. And remember, people can check you out, Mall Walker,
Yeah.
especially the video gamers, at Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, correct?
Yep. Yep. I'm on all of them. That's one of them right there.
Cool. And Twitch is a big one. That's something that I wanted to launch this show on. Never got around to it. I know Twitch is a spot where you can make some cash if enough people are watching. So
Yeah.
instead, I'm an old school guy. I send people to YouTube to join in on the chat.
I mean, I'm on all of them just because I feel like they all have their pros and cons. And I'm not trying to make any cash off of it. I just enjoy playing video games with friends and, talking Star Wars with friends. So
Cool. And,
that's
and,
what
if,
it's
and if
about.
people love playing video games online, they can join you as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Most of the people I play with are, friends that I've played with for a long time or met online and then we've just played for years.
Cool. I
It's
know
kind
I
of
know
cool.
Tyler does that with Andy from Miami, and it's a great way. It's kind of a community, right?
Yeah, yeah. You can
Oh,
end up having, building out a little clan of people that play the same game.
yeah, yeah. Well, especially the online gaming thing is been a thing now for several years. It's really cool that there's been some positivity out of that out of that community for sure. Hey man,
Yeah.
have a great weekend. Thank you again
Thank
for
you.
producing the show. I cannot thank you enough, and we look forward to chatting with you next month, which is
Yeah.
actually just around the corner. I think
Yeah,
Sunday's the
it's the
last day of
29th.
July. So all right,
Mm-hmm.
brother, be well, be safe. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, I'll see you.
Take care, man. See you. I don't want to have Suds wait any longer. Suds' schedule is not as forgiving as mine. I guess that's the way I want to put it. So, would you please welcome back to the show my new friend, but he seems like he's been a friend of mine for a long, long time, Todd Suds Sedlak. Todd, welcome back to the show. How is your weekend going?
So far, so good, my man. Hey, I
Uh,
wanted to I've got a surprise for you. I've got a new impression that I can do.
oh,
Hold on.
it's a new one of me.
No, not of you. The Star Wars character.
I'm looking forward to this. You
Did you hear
know,
that?
let me hear it one more time. Let me hear it one more time. Okay, I'm gonna say the laugh sounds like Jabba.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
I don't know any Huttese, so
that's all right. I was waiting for the Huttese, but the laugh gave it away. The laugh gave it away. Hey, what I want to do with you, Suds, is one, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you next weekend. I'm really, really
Yeah,
excited about that.
looking
Bringing
forward to it.
my wife, my daughter. It's going to be a really, really good time.
Mhm.
I wanted to talk to you about Andor. And last week's episode, I know you were not able to join us.
Mhm.
I know Vader Girl was on. I know you're a big fan of her.
Mhm.
And we talked a lot about all the Disney era stuff. We didn't
Yeah.
talk about Andor because there was nothing to talk about in the sense that we were talking about. So, based on what you've seen from Mando, Book of Boba, Obi-Wan, Andor is going to be the fourth one to follow in that format.
Mhm.
What is your expectations, if you have any, and what are you looking forward to the most? Or is there a little bit of fear that you have because you've seen some things unfold, either that you didn't like with the show,
Mhm.
or you saw some things unfold within the fan community?
Don't get me started on that. You know my thoughts on that. It's let's not both of us get canceled, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we've already lost one Patreon member
Mhm.
because he was just separate than the way that we felt about the especially Obi-Wan. I
Right.
loved it. I know you were a fan of it. But going on to Andor, how are you feeling about it, man?
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to uh getting more of Cassian's backstory. I really liked him as a character, and though I don't have his I loved Rogue One, not quite to the level that you do. I don't think anybody could love Rogue One as much as you do, but I really enjoyed it. It to this point, it's been my favorite entry of the Disney era, uh, of all the cinema, obviously, which, you know, kind of like hopping over a blade of grass. But even that notwithstanding, it was a great movie, and the fact that a lot of the same players are going to be involved in it are is very positive in my mind, up to and including the isn't it the same director that's or the same writer that did Rogue One is doing the Andor series, I believe.
You know, oddly enough, I cannot answer that truthfully
Huh.
because what I did when Rogue One came out, I'm like, how could this be a decent movie? I'm like,
Right.
you don't have the Skywalkers, you're getting rid of John Williams' film score.
Mhm.
And I went in with negative expectations of that film, and I think that's why I was blown away. I feel
Right.
like with Andor, I know like Forrest Whitaker is going to be in there. I know Alan Tudyk is not going to be in the first season anyway.
Mhm.
I have a good friend who remains anonymous that's working on the Andor film, but I don't want to know a lot about it because I want to go into it exactly how I went. I want to repeat the way I went in to Rogue One.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I went into Rogue One too, was I stayed away from any spoilers. The most I knew about Rogue One going into it was the fact that it was the mission to get the Death Star plans and that Vader was gonna be in it, which I was pretty jacked about. So,
And I'm sure
um
you were happy about Vader in Rogue One
oh, yeah.
because I
Yeah,
don't think they could have done that any better.
mm-mm. No, no, and it was that end scene, that hallway scene, just when he, when Vader you don't even hear the breathing at first, you just hear clap, clap. You hear his boots
Yeah,
on
and
the floor,
all darkness.
all dark,
You know,
and I remember being in the theater going, "Ignite the lightsaber, ignite the lightsaber, ignite the," and then I I I about lost my mind when that happened, and
one of the things that gets overlooked, and I want to talk about it. We can't really talk about Andor too much because we don't really. I don't really know much about it except
no.
for some of the people in it, but it makes you think about the great things about Rogue One. One of
Mhm,
the things that gets overlooked, in my opinion, is the close up on those Rebel fleet troopers
mhm,
during that scene. The horror and the even though they weren't in it very long, the intensity that those actors had in their portrayal of somebody in that situation was just uh I don't believe it could have been done any better.
no, I agree.
Really don't, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
So
it was, man, that end scene, the whole movie was great, but that end scene, uh, when I walk out of a movie, having to catch my breath at the end, that's a good movie.
yeah, it's a damn good movie. Near perfect, I would say. I don't know. Do you have any concern about Andor living up to the expectations of Rogue One? Because I feel like the first time I saw Solo,
Mhm,
I was like, I was kind of hoping for a Rogue One kind of thing because that was released before.
mhm.
Now, are we, those of us who love Rogue One dearly, is Andor already kind of, up against the wall because Rogue One, the bar is so high for a TV show based on the characters to follow?
In my mind, no. In the rest of the fandom,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
probably because we're looking. What I think as fans we need to think about is the first season. is 12 episodes. Is that right? And
Yes, 12 episodes. Yes.
so it's going to be a fairly slow burn as it progresses. And um
They want to tell the story. There's a lot of
yeah.
episodes,
Hmm.
like Obi-Wan. A lot of people thought that might have been a slow burn, but I thought it was episode 3.5.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
as much as I love Revenge of the Sith, it's on my top three Star Wars films
Hmm.
of all time. I felt like Obi-Wan was very satisfying.
Yeah.
I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
feel like the bar was set too high by episode 3 that the Obi-Wan show could not match that, but I think it did, and I think I don't know. Can Andor real? I don't know. Can it meet Rogue One? Who knows? Maybe we'll even love Rogue One even that much more. You
Hmm.
know?
Well, what I tend to do as a fan, I judge each project on its own merits. I try not to uh, set up expectations for anything that I'm watching because you're setting potentially set yourself up for disappointment. You
Yes,
know,
I
so
think that's wrong with the fan community.
yeah, so I take each thing on its own merits and judge it based on what's being put up on the screen and within the framework that it's being presented in, cinematic versus uh streaming series. Because there's things that you can do in a movie budget wise that you quite simply don't have the budget to do uh in a streaming series.
Yeah, right, right.
You know, I mean, yeah, some of the shots in Obi-Wan looked a little small because they were shooting them in the volume, but that's the palette that they were given. Now, is Andor gonna suffer from that? I don't think so because everything we've heard about it, it's being filmed over in England and produced over in England,
Yes.
and we saw pictures of the sets where things were outside. So I think Andor is going to look a bit bigger in spots is something that I'm anticipating. So yeah, Mall Walker just said on actual set locations. So
Yeah, sure.
that's a very good point. So I'll be interested to see how that looks compared to say The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett uh,
Right.
and those other series. I think of the scenes in The Mandalorian season 2 on Tython. I believe those were most for the most part shot outside in the real world, not inside the volume.
Right, right.
And it definitely had a different look than inside the volume. So that's the only one criticism or the thing that I would have liked to have seen done differently in Obi-Wan, the end duel in the finale with Vader and Obi-Wan, you could tell that it was being filmed in the volume. You could really tell that it looked a little small.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The scale, you mean?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like you could tell that it, it was in like a sound stage but that being said, it did leave up to Kathleen Kennedy's hype of it being the rematch of the century. That was the Vader in the suit versus Obi-Wan duel I think I've been waiting to see for 45 years, ever since I saw the first one back in '77.
Yeah, and then I think with Revenge of the Sith, it was cut short.
Mhm.
Obviously, no pun intended, but it was really cut short. And not only did we get the duel, but we also got the emotion, not the physical duel, but the emotional duel. And I think
Mhm.
the emotional duel was heavy for a lot of us. A lot of us. For those of us that cry when we watch shows, that was a part that I cried at. And
I do that from time to time with shows. I didn't with Obi-Wan, but I definitely it definitely hit me in all the appropriate Star Wars feels, for sure.
amen to that. Amen to that. Now Eric chimes in. He does this kind of an interesting point, and it's hard to argue with this. He thinks Andor should have a broader title, like the Dark Times, Mon
Mm,
Mothma's story running parallel. Shows it will be broad in scope beyond just Cassian. Yeah, well, you can kind of say that about Obi-Wan as well.
mhm.
Kenobi. It was about Leia's story. It was more than just Obi-Wan. Um, I don't know. Maybe they were going for the formula, like, hey, we got Han Solo, we got Solo, we got Obi-Wan, and then we have Andor. So
Yeah.
are they going after the formula or not? I don't know. I do believe that the name of the show would have been better if they did not call it Andor. But at the same time, that's nothing for me to go on my social media pages or Rebel Force Radio and start going, "Oh my God, this show is horrible. It hasn't even
Yeah, let's
started."
not do that again, huh?
So, Sarge, I am looking forward again to seeing you next weekend. I
Yeah, it
am
should be
looking
a good
forward
time.
to seeing you on the show next month. I will
Mhm,
work around your schedule like I like to make sure I'm available to do that. But before I let you go and bring on my third and final producer,
mhm,
I wanted to ask you if you won the Mega Millions, which is 1 point something billion.
mhm.
What would you make? What would that number one purchase be? You know, Mal Walker said he's going to buy that $26 million Star Wars mansion.
Well,
What's in
he's
the
gonna be
card?
disappointed because if I win the billion, I'm buying that. No, I already
He can live there, right? He live
yeah,
there.
he can I'll rent out a room, to him. Yeah, in fact, I had even said to, my wife, I showed her, I said, "We get these lottery tickets, we're gonna buy this house if we win." She said, "Hell no. There is no way I'm spending $26 million on a house, especially if it has that much Star Wars crap in it."
But if that's what your wife said.
That's what my wife said, so but no, in all honesty, I mean, for sure, uh, all of us, everybody I know would wanna go. We're flying over to London, Easter weekend 2023 on a private jet, and we're going to Star Wars Celebration Europe.
You know, I will take you up on that offer. Now, I
I
did
thought
not
you would.
realize though. I did. You're the first one bringing this to my attention because as soon as I found out it was going to be in London in April, I'm like, I'm not going to go. But
Mhm.
is that over Easter weekend?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is,
Wow.
and I thought maybe well, um they're doing it over Easter weekend because the Church of England, their calendar is different than the Catholic calendar.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe that wasn't their Easter, but it is for Easter. They're on the same calendar, so it's kind of a head scratcher to me that they're doing that over Easter weekend. So that's why
Yeah, especially over there because it is like old school Catholic Europe
mhm,
over there.
mhm,
I filmed the Force Among Us in Norway Easter weekend, and I also was in Germany. No, I was not in Germany on Easter weekend, but I was in Germany on a Sunday,
mhm,
and it was closed down because hardcore Catholicism,
mhm.
um, and everything was closed. And I tell you, when you have a hangover on a Sunday in Germany and the pharmacy is not open, it is it is hell on earth. But I will be there with you if you win that Mega Million. So good luck to you. And
Oh, wow. Cody Moore just Mall Walker said he's going to London next year.
he's going to London. He
Yeah,
is going to
lucky.
London, and he'll take a room in that mansion that you're gonna
Mhm.
that you're going to win. So,
All right.
All right. So thanks again, brother, for sharing your Andor anticipation. I look forward to having a couple beers and chatting with you next weekend.
Hey, bring your bathing suit.
I will. Yes, we will bring the bathing suits. We will bring our like-minded, positive attitudes as well as all Star Wars fans.
Yep.
Should do.
All righty.
All right. Cheers, brother. Cheers. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. But we have a half a show left. Like we are flying half a ship. I feel like we're doing okay without Tyler Page tonight, as he's got the night off, as he's hanging out with some friends wherever he is. But I want to thank my next show producer for being behind the scenes here tonight, Matthew Rooney. You're doing a good job, man. I approve.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
you are getting your feet wet here tonight, live and in action. And Mo Walker says, "Long live the Tyler." Yes, Tyler,
please.
Tyler has been producing this show with me for a long time, since last year. Matthew, you've been on the show before. You've recently become a producer after ICC Con, which is a fantastic convention. I plan on returning next year. How about you?
Yeah, I already booked a room.
You booked a room. Nice.
I didn't buy my ticket yet. The tickets went on sale yesterday. I'm hoping that they'll give RFR people a discount again, but I did book a hotel room.
You booked a hotel room.
In the same hotel as you and Tyler.
Nice. Same hotel, different room.
Different room, yes.
Different, right? Tyler's like, I'm getting too old to just pile up everybody and I'm like, yeah, man, nobody's sleeping on the floor.
No, definitely not.
So Matthew, you've been binge watching a lot of the content, and there's so much. There's 85. There's almost 85 podcast episodes. There's almost 80 something inside the Wampa Caves. There's 40 inside the Vault segments. There's documentaries up the wazoo. For some reason right now, as I'm talking to you about this, I feel like we're doing a WTTW telethon right now. Like, you guys want to join Machtails on Patreon because look at this plethora of content you get. So how did it feel to just take a deep dive into all the content at once? And did you not have anything else to watch?
There's other stuff to watch. I like to listen to stuff, especially in the morning when I'm getting going. And then it just so happened that at work right now, I'm an archaeologist, and I did some digging in May. And so right now I'm doing all the artifact analysis. And when I'm doing that, I can listen and watch things while I'm working, because it's not like a lot of my work is writing. And with that, I have to focus on what I'm doing and I can't listen to things. But when I'm sorting artifacts and counting them and typing in data, I can listen. So I just had it going all the time. Within 3 months, I started with your documentaries, I did Real Fans, and then I went through chronologically and watched all your YouTube shows, and I listened to all the audio podcasts. I didn't do Inside the Vault yet, and I didn't do Wampa Cave yet. But I watched all that stuff. It took me 3 months, but I went through all of it, and
that's a lot.
I'm kind of with like chronological, like I like to listen and watch things as they come out. And so I even would check like on the next YouTube video, okay, that was July 29th. And so I'm going to listen to these podcasts first and then go back. So I got the whole 2-year experience. And so it was really fun. And then I finished and I was like, well, what am I going to do now?
Why not? You're being on the show. You're giving us content. Yeah. You know, it's funny because you're into, you do that for a living. You're an archaeologist. And to me, when that word comes to mind, I think of somebody that, you know, keeps track of historical artifacts and kind of records the past and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. One of the things when I jumped into the podcast episodes of Machtails, I didn't do any show notes, like these beautiful show notes that Rebel Force Radio does. I was just like, here it is.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that you were going to go back and listen to all those, because you could have probably taken some good show notes on there that we could have posted. But, you know, we're going to leave it to people's imaginations. What have you been enjoying the most from this whole train wreck dumpster fire experience?
It's just nice. Like, I kind of grew up without, I didn't have like a bunch of Star Wars friends growing up. I had one friend, I haven't talked about this friend actually, but I had this is going kind of dark, I guess, again, but my best friend growing up as a teenager also took his life, and he was like my Star Wars buddy. Like, we met in the 90s as teenagers, and we were in a band together, and we watched all the prequel movies together. We had like lightsabers and we'd fight each other with them and all that kind of stuff. And but other than him, I didn't really have Star Wars, friends. So, in the 2000s, I got in with the Force Cast, which later became Rebel Force Radio. And so it was sort of filling in that void for me, just because I've never really been outgoing or, gone on my way to be, around other people. And so like having those kind of shows to listen to makes me feel like I'm not alone, and I have friends who I can, relate to and listen to what they have to say. And then plus I've met all you guys recently, and I have plans to meet up with you again in the future. And so for that reason, I also feel a sort of connection as well. But I just love watching the show and listening, and we have a lot of things in common. And so I like to shoot you a note like, oh, hey,
Yeah, it blows my mind how much stuff we have in common. I mean, everything from, you dealing with your friend, taking his own life. I mean, that's the story of me and my father.
Mhm.
And I've talked about that, so many times on the show. And, music tastes, you having run-ins with, like you said, didn't you say that you had lived down the street from Frank Zappa's childhood home?
Yeah, I grew up. I'm from Los Angeles originally, and I lived mostly up in the Antelope Valley, which is in like northern Los Angeles County, and so that's where Zappa lived and grew up, and also Beefheart, Don Van Vliet, who was Captain Beefheart. They both went to school, like high school there. We went to the same high school, and like I obviously Zappa is much older than me. I'm in my late 30s now. But I knew people growing up who knew him. Like there was a lady I worked with at the library who like was in his class, like his graduating class at high school, and so she just knew him personally back then. And I even got I was mentioning earlier I was much more into Beefheart than I was into Zappa. I still enjoy Zappa stuff, but Beefheart is really where I was really close to. And Beefheart's original guitar player in the Magic Band, like in '64. I used to get my hair cut by his daughter.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like she worked at the hair salon near where I lived in my late teens, and so I would go and get my hair cut, and she's like, "Yeah, have you heard of Beefheart?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And which I mean, most people wouldn't say that, but since I grew up there, I did. And she's like, "Oh yeah, my dad was in that band." So it was kind of funny to be in a place like that. But yeah, where I went to high school was like a couple blocks from. Like Zappa wasn't there anymore when I got into high school, but I was told this is where Zappa lived, and he had some songs on some of his older like Mothers of Invention albums, like on We're Only in It for the Money, where he is talking about growing up, and he was living in a house. And at the time I could have told you where it was, and I'm not sure. It's been 20 years since I lived there, so I'm not sure if it's there anymore, but I knew where it was. It was sort of like part of my teenage landscape, so to speak.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even that story, it's like Muddy Waters lived behind me when I was an infant in Westmont, looks like you got a little show and tell there.
This is the Bongo Fury album.
Oh yeah, Bongo Fury, yes.
Yeah, so in '75, Beefheart couldn't do any recordings because he signed too many contracts at the same time. And so Zappa let him come and sing for his tour in '75, and this is the Bongo Fury album. This photograph was taken in an ice cream shop where I grew up. It was called Lickety Splits. It's like right across the street from my elementary school. It's not there anymore. It's gone now. But this is taken in. I used to go to this ice cream shop like once a week after I got out of school. And it's just really weird because this is like mid '70s. Like Zappa was already quite famous by then, and he would still come like Beefheart. Vliet moved back to that town, and so they would just go and hang out there, I suppose, or at least they took the photograph there. So that was kind of a cool thing from where I grew up as well.
Now, here's a $1 million question. Did you take a photo like that?
No.
Lickety split.
No, I wish I had. But see, like, I think that was torn down in the 90s. So by the time I was getting into music as a teenager, I'm not sure it was there anymore. Like, I didn't know about this until I was a little bit older.
Gotcha. You just knew that it was
my buddy who I have a close friend who's 20 years older than me, who's also into that stuff. And so he told me, well, that. So I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I remember being in there.
It's funny. I don't think there's been another artist that's been mentioned on Mocktails more than Frank Zappa. I think he's been, he's been mentioned so many times. Hey, speaking about music, Antonio from New Jersey, producer, he is going to be doing hopefully what is a weekly segment on the Machtails podcast episode that is going to focus on like a music minute. It's going to be, like we're going to take one topic, break it down within 5 minutes, no longer than 10 minutes, and just kind of bring back the music element to the show because it's one of the things that drives me. Speaking about Antonio from New Jersey, I need to share this. We talked about a lot of conventions. This is the convention exclusive from San Diego Comic-Con. Hallmark has finally put out a Gonk droid and a mouse droid ornament. And technically, it's still Christmas in July. If you celebrate that kind of thing, this is one. Well, it's not numbered, but there was only 3,000 of these made. So thank you so much for hooking me up with that. Going back to music, Lollapalooza, I told you that I was there in 92. Ministry had blown my mind. If you could go back in time and go to one of those festivals and see the bands as they were then, not as they are now. Some of them we can't see now, like unfortunately Soundgarden. But what festival would you say, you know what, that is the one that I would take a time machine and go back and see? That looks like Trent Reznor there.
Yeah, it would be the first one. I was too young. I'm 8 or 9 years younger than you, so I couldn't. I mean, I was already starting at a very young age. I got into some of this music at a very young age. Like I was listening to you recently, or I guess it was back in April or March. You had Jimmy Mack on your audio podcast, and he was talking about how people kind of get into music when they're about 12. I was a little earlier than that, but I was like in the 90s. My favorite band was Nine Inch Nails. I was obsessed with Nine Inch Nails. I have the original records. I pulled a couple of them out. Pretty Hate Machine is still like in my top 3 albums of all time. And this is an original record. I know nowadays they reproduce all this stuff, but I've had this since the 90s. Even though they stopped making records, you could still, where I grew up in LA, you could still get a hold of a lot of them. I even have like some of the old singles, even still, like had like a whole single and The Sin. I had a t-shirt with this. Sin was one of the songs from Pretty Hate Machine. I had a t-shirt with this on it, and I used to get made fun of for that actually in school because people didn't know what it meant. But even though I was too young, I had magazines, with pictures from this show, this 91 Lollapalooza. This is like before Downward Spiral, even before I think that Broken EP that he did, and I was just obsessed. Like I would like daydream about being at this show. And nowadays you can go on YouTube and there's clips of it and stuff like that. But back then, like I would just, yeah, of course not. But back then I couldn't even have that. I could just read about it,
Yeah.
So you had Nine Inch Nails. You also had Susie and the Banshees.
Let me see if I can name them all. Okay.
I have a list. Go ahead.
The headliner was Jane's Addiction.
Right.
Fishbone was booked, but they canceled.
Okay. They're listed here. Yeah.
Yeah, Fishbone actually ended up in 93. Not until 93 they came back. Henry Rollins' band had opened up the show.
Okay.
As Susie and the Banshees. The Butthole Surfers were on that bill.
Yeah, that's another one that I was never super into them, but I appreciate who they are now, and so I would like to see them.
Oh yeah. And then it's kind of funny because they're in the same vein to some degree as Nine Inch Nails. I mean, they are considered the industrial band. Who I'm missing somebody. I'm missing 2 other artists.
Yeah, 3 according to this list.
3 according to that.
And one of them is, 2 of them actually. I've seen one of them, but one of them I never got to see, and I would like to see.
Living Color was on that bill.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see that one. So there's 4 actually.
How do I take myself out of this hole? This is like some music trivia here on Machtails.
Okay. Well, I have one of the records here, unless you want to keep thinking about it.
Yeah, let me see the record with cover up the name. Let me just see the.
This isn't one of the more popular ones. I don't know. You might get it though. You can probably see the. Oops, I'm hiding it.
No, you know what? I don't know. The Violent Femmes, they were on the side stage. They were a side stage band.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, maybe they were on the main stage throughout the tour, but yeah, they were not. They were not one of the main. Well, who else was I missing?
Well, so there's one that you talked about on a recent show, Body Count.
Body Count. Yes,
I think
Body
it was a
Count.
recent show.
Yeah,
I had that cassette before it got banned.
yeah, that was a big thing, man. When Body Count, they did a whole cop killer thing,
Right.
Which is kind of crazy. It's
Well,
kind of.
and I lived in LA. I grew up in LA, and so I was in the middle of all that stuff
How
going on.
far away were you from?
I was in Los Angeles. I mean, I lived in northern LA County, but I was down in Santa Monica, and I mean, there were certain places you just didn't go, especially being white. You wouldn't want to go down there.
Right. Yeah, that moment in time was pretty heavy. I think just and for me, it didn't divide me from the rest of the country. There was God that was a wild time. And I mentioned on the podcast, my mom was dating a African American guy during that time, and he was one of the nicest guys. That his name was Greg Thomas, what is the most generic name. I can never find this guy online. One of the nicest guys. It was a life-changing thing for me. And through the music from the early 90s, I remember Soundgarden playing Cop Killer in 92 at Lollapalooza. It was just a heavy time. It was a heavy time, and a lot of those memories came back when we were going through a similar time over the last couple years,
Right.
But Lava 91 for you, I would have to say my favorite was probably still Lava 93. That was Primus, Rage Against the Machine, Alice in Chains, Dinosaur Jr. That was a good one. 92 was good. I was not at the first Lala. And the reason why I wanted to bring up Lala is because it is in Chicago every year. It is not what it used to be. I feel like a Star Wars fan talking about the Disney era, the negative Star Wars fan talking about the Disney era. When it comes to me and Lollapalooza in Chicago over the last 15 years, it's not the same. It's not what it used to be.
But it's even more farther away because at least at Disney, I mean, Lucasfilm still has many of the same behind the scenes people that they've had for 20 or 30 years. So there's still some connectivity there. Whereas I think those music shows are not anything the same as they were in the 90s.
No, absolutely not. And again, I talked to producer Brian Klein about this last night. I'm going to drop this on in the next podcast episode. You have to remember when there is a music movement like the late 60s, like the early 90s, that is very, very often never repeated. You cannot repeat that. You can't fabricate it. And I was just really happy to be part of the early 90s movement. So before we go, I know that you have to, there's probably some burning question in your brain that we did not talk about on the Father's Day episode. When you watched or listened to the content that I kind of left hanging in the balance. I know sometimes I do that on the podcast shows because I'm stringing my thoughts together. It's a very challenging thing to do. Mind you, was there anything that you were like, why did he do this? Why did he not do that?
Well, I do have a question that I've been thinking about. It's not really related necessarily to your back catalog at all, but I've been thinking lately about when did Empire Strikes Back become like the fan favorite film? Because like I said, for me, I grew up
in general for everybody.
Like most people will say, not everybody, but a lot of people will say Empire is their favorite movie. It's very popular to hear nowadays, and I feel like it has been for about 20 years or so. But like when did? Because like I said, in the 80s, I was a kid, and so it was mostly me and my mom watching the movies. And to me, Empire out of those three was my least, and I still liked them all, but it was my least of the three that I liked. And then I remember distinctly, like when Kevin Smith got big in the 90s. There's that scene in Clerks where Randall asks Dante, like, what did you like better, Empire or Jedi? And so first of all, he doesn't even include A New Hope because it's like a given that that's the best one. But then when Dante says Empire, Randall says blasphemy, as if like most people would have thought Jedi was better. So I don't know. Was that the case then? I mean, you're a little older than me and you were probably more close to fandom.
Well, I think that's a really good a question, and kind of just like, I know Tyler likes hearing about this stuff from us because he wasn't around, and we're kind of living proof the way things were back in those days and how they are today, and the pros and the cons and the differences and all that. I would have to say, for me, that was the film that I first fell upon. It was like fate. And for me, as a 5-year-old watching that film, that was the one that resonated with me, simply maybe because the fact that the toys were cool. I was at that age where, getting toys was a thing. And Frank Oz as Yoda was a Muppet, essentially. So that was my connection. I can't speak for everybody else, but as I found out after I rediscovered the film when I was 16 years old, I started to talk to people, and Empire was their favorite. So you could say that Empire might have been the thing that created community within the fans before the internet, because it was the one thing that everybody could relate to, because when at the time there were only the 3 films, and people would say, hey, what's your favorite film? Or this is my favorite film. So I don't know why or how it became the thing, when it became the thing. For me, it became my favorite one when I rediscovered it in October of '91. And it's hard to put that as a number 2, but when I do put it as a number 2, Rogue One is at the top. Rogue One makes me feel like the 5-year-old watching Empire Strikes Back. I've said that before, and I can't reiterate that enough. It was just, it brought out that Star Wars feel to me like I have not felt in a very, very long time. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's always been a thing,
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to think, that maybe it was just me who didn't realize it all those years. Because I only started to notice it like in the mid 2000s, and maybe that's just because that's when I started to pay attention to what people were saying, especially on the internet. I wasn't big on the Force.net, but I was really big on the Dark Horse forums. I used to use those regularly. And so that's where I started to kind of see what people were saying a lot of the time.
I mean, I think too, if you take a look at it, it has Boba Fett. It has better lightsaber duels. It has bigger ships. It's a more highly produced film than the first one because they had the money to do it. And the costumes are 10 times cooler in Empire than A New Hope. The lighting is, in my opinion, better. I mean, who doesn't like blue? There's so much blue from the Hoth sky to Cloud City. They're like, blue is a constant color. Luke Skywalker's lightsaber is blue. I mean, it's like the primary color of that film. I think when Empire was first released too, when they had the logo on a lot of things. Some things in my cases have Empire in the blue logo.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was the color that everybody loved that drew people. I don't know, but the music was better, right? Because it was more defined. And I think Jedi took a turn for people because people were getting older. People weren't into toys as much. Ewoks were introduced, and a lot of people that were like 14 years old were like, what the hell is this? Teddy bears? So I think maybe that is simply why Empire, holds the torch when it comes to the original trilogy. And some old school fans might argue the fact that A New Hope's the best because it's the first thing they saw on screen, right? Just because it's the first doesn't mean it's the best. But apparently when it comes to music and Star Wars, we like to have these debates.
Yeah. For me, it's still, the first one's still my favorite, but it's just because of, all of the like the invention that went into it. I mean, they had to build everything from scratch. And as a kid, I knew that because they, had those documentaries, like they had that From Star Wars to Jedi video that I had as a kid in the 80s. And so like watching that, I knew that this was a revolutionary thing and that they had made it on a small budget. And
Yeah,
And you know,
there's a better story to how they got the first one made.
right. And the trench run is just like I mean, it was so incredible to me as a kid. Like I remember there was an arcade game in the 80s that had the trench run in it, and I would go and find that arcade game and play it because I was just so obsessed with that particular scene. Just the speed and the whole look of it was just incredible. And like the point where Han comes in and saves the day is just like, it's still one of those moments that I get a big grin, even though I've seen it hundreds of times and it's almost 40 years since I first saw it. I still get like chills when I see that part because it's just so heroic and so amazing to me. So that one's still my favorite, but obviously I like them all. So
Oh, it's kind of like the sunset scene too. Like when I first saw that for the second time, when I saw that as a teenager. So this would have been the spring of '92. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the heaviest scene. The music was there. The sky was beautifully lit. It was that moment. And then like you finding out, okay, Empire's been the fan favorite for how long? I found out that everybody loved and references that sunset scene. And I'm like, what is it? Has this been everybody's favorite scene from the original trilogy for so many years? And I guess you could say too that everybody loves that scene because it is so good. But if you take the sunset out and you take the John Williams film score out of it, it's not going to be as powerful as it is on screen.
Well, and then you recreated that scene a little bit for one of your film covers too, right?
Yeah, for the first one, and I got to tell you, after going to Tunisia in 2006, 2006, because Sith came out in 05. I went in June of 06. That made me fall in love with A New Hope all over again.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
It gave me this appreciation being in that, because that was the first filming location that I went to.
Right.
Was that some people go to Italy, some people go to the Redwood Forest in Northern California, but mine was Tunisia, and you're covering episode 1, you're covering A New Hope, and it was just, you got the best of both worlds, the old and the new, and it was magical,
Yeah, for me, I had seen, because I grew up, like I said, in Los Angeles, and so like I would go to Death Valley. Like I was in the Scouts a little bit as a teenager, and we would go camp and we would go backpacking at Death Valley. So I had been there a bunch of times, and then also where I lived was like right on the edge of the Mojave Desert. Not in Star Wars, but almost every film scene where there's a desert, shot was done like down the street from one of the places that I live. Like when I watch what's that other space show? Not Serenity, but the show that Serenity spawned out of.
You're not talking about Close Encounters.
No. There was a show in the early 2000s. Anyway,
okay.
all those kind of desert scenes, a lot of them are done in the same location, and like I can recognize it because I used to go out there and smoke cigarettes and stuff like that when I was a teenager.
Well, like Cody was talking about, he wants to go to Kauai. I want to go back, and my wife's like, we've been there, done that so many times. So like, going to Kauai never gets old. Now, because you do archaeology work, you're in that profession. I find it fascinating that I never I show this on Inside the Wampa Cave, the crate dragon bones, right? Like the dragon bones from the original Star Wars film that the locals that live in this third world country, this third world part of the world, they've had these pieces for how long? It's like they dig them up in the desert. These are Star Wars artifacts. You might be dealing with dinosaurs. What blows your mind more?
Well, actually, I have to correct you. I'm sorry, but that's a common misunderstanding. Archaeologists study humans, so dinosaurs are paleontology.
You were throwing me under the bus right there.
I know, but everybody does that. Like when I teach introduction to archaeology, and that's the first slide is like a dinosaur with an X over it, because everybody thinks so. It's not your fault. It's just how it gets portrayed.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so I deal with human. I mean, it's anything to do with humans, material culture, and which is also all over the world and everywhere.
Which is also fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. I find it to be.
I would say almost equally as fascinating.
Yeah.
So what is more fascinating? Star Wars things unearthed, or you said you deal with people?
Yeah, well,
Are we talking human bones and that kind of thing?
well, some people do. I don't do human skeletal remains, and in fact, in the U.S., that's a complicated issue. I'm it's dealing with people's stuff that they left behind, basically. So if you're dealing with sort of like earlier Native American cultures, it'll be pottery and stone tools, and
Okay, yeah, sure.
I mean, like sometimes animal bones are involved because that's what people were eating. But I particularly specialize in sort of later, like post European invasion of the Western Hemisphere type stuff. And in fact, where I work here in Arkansas, I do a lot of plantation archaeology because there's a lot of history on like the slave owning families at plantations, but very little is known about what it was like to be a slave, and also after emancipation, what was life like for black tenant farmers and sharecroppers. And so a lot of what I do is excavating sharecropper house sites, and then I work with the local African American communities to sort of better tell that history and focus and create some heritage for them that they've never had before because of the dominance of other types of history.
That's amazing. Fascinating. There's more of a story to tell with that though than digging up Star Wars artifacts.
Yeah, some people would argue that there's more there, and some might say that it's more important because it's people's heritage that's been lost. But I think people can be passionate about either, and there's a lot of people who have a very deep tie to Star Wars. I do myself as well, and so I mean I've obviously been listening to your show and listening to Rebel Force Radio for 15 years, and watching all these documentaries, and I'm watching those there's a bunch of new documentaries at the moment. There's the Light and Magic stuff on Disney Plus, and then there's the Icons on Earth, and I've been putting that on too while I'm working, and that stuff I could watch that all day. I love that kind of stuff too. So to me, it's kind of equally as interesting, to be honest.
Speaking about the Icons on Earth, which I want to binge watch that. I have to be honest with you, I'm familiar with the show. I don't want to wait for the next one. I want to sit down and watch them all once. There's 3 episodes right now, or just 2 still?
There's probably 3. I've only seen 2, but I think there's probably 3 out by now. If
there's 3, I could probably start now. But John Tenuto and Mary Jo and Dan Matson, who are all part of my past projects, they also contributed to these Icons on Earth specials. And they will be joining the show, if not next month, in September, for sure.
Well, good. I look forward to seeing them on the show. Dan Matson's one of my favorite people. I hope I can meet him one day. I love hearing him on your show and on any show, really. But Tenuto also, I was rewatching your Force Among Us today, as I was telling you earlier, and you had Tenuto in that as well. And I enjoy, sociology has some overlap with my discipline of anthropology, which is what archaeology is included in. And I teach anthropology classes too. And so I enjoy hearing what sociologists have to say, since, I use a lot of their theoretical stuff in my own work too. So.
Yeah, we try to have John on the show. He was the missing element, but Rich Brendel, who's still watching the show tonight, he did a great job filling in for the missing John Tenuto. He said that show that you were trying to look for was Firefly.
Yeah, that's the one. That one has a ton of scenes. Like almost every episode has scenes shot like down the street from where I lived for a while, and that's just because of its proximity to Hollywood.
That's crazy. Hey, Matthew, well, thank you again for producing the show, binge watching all this stuff, and being a part of the journey. And I look forward to having you on the show next month. You did a great job behind the scenes. I have a feeling we're going to have you back doing that again. So,
thank you. I look forward to everything.
Hey, have a great weekend. But before we let you guys go, I have to do the name draw here, the Patreon name draw. Remember, you have to tune in live to do this. I'm going to do 3 names. James Johnson. I want to say James Johnson was the Patreon member that had departed us because I was very strong about my hate towards the hater. Brandon Wolgast, He been a supporter of a long time. We keep drawing his name. He never tunes in live, although he watches and binges a lot of Machtails content. Michael Adams. We're going to do one more, and then we will put these names back in the pot. What do you win? You win Tunisian sand? You win great dragon bones from Tunisia? Sharon Sandoval, are you tuning in live? We will see you next week at C2E2. I'm going to do one more. Man, there's so many. I'm giving shout-outs at this point. Harry Harmon, Level Freak, and he also did the Machtails design work for us. Andre Wolf. I said I was only going to do 3, but I really like doing the shout-outs. I'm going to stop with this one. Musical composer and good friend Clint Nelson. Are you tuning in live? No, but we need to have you back on the show. And we will see you guys on the show next time we do this, which is going to be in August. We're going to do 2 shows in August again. And don't forget, you can become a Patreon member today for just $2 a week. Thank you guys for tuning in live. Thank you guys for watching this on the replay. We will catch you guys next time on Machtails from the Cantina. Another round live. Chut chut and choo choo. So long, everybody.